companion not to annoy him because he took only in order to try out new abilities. Who flew nearby could not believe but that our friends actually killed newcomers, but our hero already had everything. Even if he had a sword in his hand, he would transfer his order points directly to the sword. As soon as he used this ability, an incredible aura began to radiate out of it. An incredible light immediately blinded the demon, and also why is this light so bright at all? But the sword has already received its points. The system looked into the past characteristics of the selected object. Everything went well. Now this sword was called a bloody rusty iron sword, and the required number of decency points is 9.000. Does our main character want to give decency points to this item? Our protagonist initially thought that some unique item from the same Tan or Ellie would cost exactly the same amount, but still his interest prevailed, because it turned out to be much more expensive than it seemed. But he was still interested in curiosity, so he decided to check it out. Our main character's eyes just lit up. A smile never left his face. Now the same aura that was next to your protagonist earlier radiated from him. Now the probability points were transferred. The settings that appeared on the iron blood ball also changed rapidly. Now the rusty blood sword reached a higher rank. All the memories that were involved with this sword were reflected in his new abilities. Rusty Blood Sword was given an item that was suitable for his rank, and he received an item called Bloodsucker. The characteristics of this sword were simply incredible, but the main thing was that in the description it was written that this sword was actually one of a kind, which was filled with the blood of people sacrificed by one assassin in the past. It was form twisted by an unknown force, becoming much more powerful. Of course, it's a pity that it hasn't changed much, but is it really worth so many points? And what did our main character expect from an ordinary rusty sword? Tang, who was clearly indignant, asked, after all, what exactly happened? What did his master just do? After all, did he really have such abilities before? But why didn't he use them before? Ellie, who also saw it all, understood that it seemed like a lot of money had to be spent, so she decided to just check how much power the ball would have at all, which Mr. hits more and more. Our main character, looking at them and also understanding what they want to say, said that he was pleased to hear their words from them, but asked them to remember that cheese is free only to the mousetrap, so if they want to exchange decency points, then everything should be done only with a fair deal. Both companions immediately became embarrassed, but the main character continued to look at the very dream that he had created with his own power. Anyway, regarding this skill, it was definitely worth the further investment in it. It was still hard to believe that it was possible to achieve such performance for such an item, and now his sword looked more like a level 70 item. But what would happen if you tried to sell this item? Our protagonist immediately changed his face. An incredibly strange and intimidating aura began to radiate from him, and both companions realized that he was up to something. But he's our character, and when he opened up his inventory, he realized that if his skill changed so much for a very ordinary item, then what did he do with all the items he got from Tan? Our character took out the demonic cave destroyer and then tried to give it some decency points. The system also started saying that it started looking into the past characteristics of the selected item, but nothing succeeded. That at the moment there is no worked out that can be done for the object. Object simply could not pass decency points. Even the main character did not understand what the problem was, because why he did not manage to pass the points. What does it mean to say about the past characteristics? After all, if these two items were one of those that he had used for a long time, then it turns out that you can't just transfer points just because he had used this item for a long time. There remains only one difference that can be clearly considered in this sense. Even the protagonist immediately understood. He held up his finger and said that it was how much this item had a direct impact on the world of Arcadia. The two companions who were looking at the sword at this moment were all shocked. Why was there such a terrifying aura from this sword? Why was the blood so thick that it resembled the blood of a high-ranking vampire? But our main character, who immediately put this sword in his inventory, stealing his companion, said that he seems to understand everything. Tanmi was pleased with this because our character immediately stole the sword he was looking at from under his nose. The main character said that there is nothing to look at this sword because the vampire's treasury will already be filled with even more valuable items, and even more so, he would still be going to sell it. Did this sword even surrender to the vampire? The vampire didn't understand why our character wants to sell this sword at all, and in case of gold, it's not necessary because the vampire has a lot of money that the vampires are willing to offer a lot of things for the sake of this sword. What do you need to do to get decency points? The vampire just asks not to worry about it because he will exchange them at the most favorable rate. Ellie also joined in on the discussion, saying that they actually had gold in abundance. But our character just looked at them with a sideways glance and said that he didn't need money at all, because one way or another he was going to earn even more and more every month. For example, he would sign a contract with the Baroness or start sawing videos. The vampire was not very happy with all this. He asked why you are the one he wants to sell this knife. What's the problem to start with a new one? With the one he went with before, isn't our protagonist interested? But our main character just smiled, looking at his suspicious face again. He said that he was certainly very interested, because the first is the only item in the whole world, so still awesome characteristics that can erase the whole world. This minimum requirement also allowed almost anyone to use it. However, what would happen if the item ended up in an auction? The vampire suggested that chaos was likely to break out, and Ellie put the word of peace in her thumbs up directly to her companions and said that he didn't know himself, so he decided to put up and understand what would happen next. In fact, this item was the only one of its kind and was also sent to auction. The next morning, when our main character finally came to his university, he was very tired, which means that the very first couple is the most difficult thing to eat that day. He's even considering moving the entire evening group next year. But then our protagonist sat down suddenly, who asked him because what is he doing at all? Our character didn't understand what his friend was talking about because did he really have trouble with his head? But his friend just started showing the same auction, asking our protagonist not to pretend because if he did not know. Then everywhere you can see the name of the seller and how magically it looks like his nickname, or rather the nickname of our main character. Where in general did our protagonist find such a powerful item called a bloodsucker? Dex, who was obviously happy with himself and was walking, smiled and asked, because if he was talking about it, he would tell you now. His friend was still in shock, because he just couldn't believe his eyes that the only item of its kind, he had never even heard of such a thing. Did some hidden class really work here? Otherwise he doesn't understand how he was able to find it at all. But Dex only said that everyone has their own methods, keeping silent about the method of finding this item. Of course, the friend did not want to calm down. He began to ask how he got this item, asked him to tell him, because everything will remain a secret, and asked him to see for himself, because no one still knows who actually reveals the most famous Dex. By that time, the auction had already begun, but the people who were sitting at home in the offices began to talk about the fact that there was just an incredible item at the auction. Bids started at 800 gold, and many people took out loans to finally bid on them. Many owners of towers and guilds were willing to pay as much as they needed, and money was not a problem for them. They only asked to bring this item. But at one point, as soon as the bid for this product reached incredible numbers, an urgent notification was announced that there had just been a surge in bids for one particular product. A freeze was activated, and trading was temporarily suspended. Many people who were sitting in Arcadia's office couldn't believe that someone was willing to buy this item for 5,000 gold. The currency was also quite expensive, because if one gold coin is worth about 10,001, then the whole thing is worth about several billion. We were looking at Arcadia, the Korean branch. Everyone came up to one of the managers and asked what it meant, a rank called the only one. The general manager said that this simply could not be because there were only a few levels of items, or rather 8. Usually magical, rare, epic, unique, legendary. In addition, all this time, it was possible to sell goods of no higher than rare rank at the auction. But then, what exactly was in front of him now? The CEO, looking at this sword that Dex was selling, thought it was a tank, that it just couldn't happen. After this incident, the remaining auctions that were related to the bloodsucker item were suspended. In addition, it was completely withdrawn. Such a decision led to a lot of discontent among users, but from the point of view of the Arcadia developers themselves, they had no choice but to prevent the appearance of goods that could disrupt the balance of the game. A lot of problems were caused to all employees of Arcadia. Since then, everywhere they were users, there was constant talk about this product, on the street, in homes, the guild. During the day, more and more players became interested in the seller, who put this product up for sale. After seeing the name that you've heard about it before. If someone hadn't heard of this name, they explained that if they didn't know a person with the name Dex, they were probably behind the times. They said that this was one of the most brilliant players who always goes alone. And even real professionals didn't stand next to him. He plays with, but then they decided to leave these disputes, because until recently, no one even knew what he was doing, and now it's spread all over Arcadia. Someone considered this person a legend, regardless of what item he put up for sale, but someone still did not know anything about him at all. And someone even began to hate him a long time ago. That's how, or rather, this is how Dex let everyone know about his identity in Arcadia. Standing on one of the roofs, he thought, after all, it will also happen now. The person who was still looking at the given item was raised that the shape of this sword is familiar. 100% that it is very similar to the same sword that was held by that marauder in the video, which is a pity for all newcomers. At that time, there was no single way to find out who he was, and especially with his rights as a regular administrator, the same goes for the creator of this item. The person understood that it was impossible for there to be even more of them. He was incredibly annoyed by the seller with the name Dex. He was annoyed by an item that was registered with a bid of more than 5,000 gold. It must have been, but our main character, in their opinion, strongly wants to take this item back, so if he wants to do it, then he will have to come out into the light. The man thought that he had finally caught him, that he was trapped. But Dex, who in turn was convinced by the message that bidding for the goods restored by him was submitted by the administrator, surprised him a little. Vidya asked him to contact the customer service center for more information. Looking at this, he knew that it was likely that the item's characteristics were actually quite deceptive, and he knew that the administrators would step in sooner or later, but he didn't know that they did it so directly. Kang, who had been following this all along, asked his master what had happened in the first place. But in our case, the protagonist only reminded about the very sword that he recently made, and also said that it was taken away. Kang was shocked, because if anyone dared to do this, they should have immediately found this gas, then punished him. After all, so many points had to be spent, he just took it away. Because does even the protagonist understand that this is a real robbery? Tan assured that there is no need to worry, because he is always ready to help him. Bunnies is decent, he is ready to do more than that. But our main character, after a little thought, immediately smiled and turned to the vampire. That then you just need to give him these points, because you can make another such sword and try to sell it again, because most likely Tan has quite a lot of points. Tan, disappointed, looked at our lead character. I ask him, after all, does he think that he is actually a rich young man? Of course, our Protoka was not joking. He understood that now the game company clearly hates him. In addition, they don't know anything about him at all. He put up a product that he made with the help of decency points, while Sonic. In other words, the only thing they know about him is that if his actions were in his favor, they would have allowed him to sell this product without any problems. But these managers only went to extreme measures, simply taking it away. The smile never left our main character's face. He understood that they not only did not impose any sanctions on him, but did not even try to contact him. Which means that even though they now know his nickname, they still do not know who he is, where he lives, despite the fact that even in the past, they have not tried to contact him. The game can't track it. They definitely shouldn't have used any drastic actions against him. He said that this was most likely the strength of the hidden class called Chaotic Wanderer. Otherwise, what right did he have to calmly start chaos and even make it so that the management couldn't stop him? What a crazy freak made this class, and every time our main character wants to meet him more and more, so one way or another, but thanks to these abilities, he is completely safe. By pulling your gloves tighter, it seemed like now was the time to blow the administrators' asses even more. Once again, we see the Korean branch of Arcadia, where people were just shocked that they couldn't do anything. Everyone looked at the CEO with horror, because they knew that most likely the only thing they can assume is that the help desk department has been overworking a lot lately, staying at work late. But the CEO just kept repeating the same name, or rather the name Dex. Unfortunately, at the moment they have not been able to find the culprits, but here it is clearly visible that this item was actually created by one of the users. The CEO, who was reporting back to their superiors, said that all the recent incidents, from the witch hunt to the rest of the item problems, weren't in their plans. Not that it wasn't planned, but they couldn't even imagine something like this just by watching from the sidelines. They just needed to take some action, but what would the director say? The girl who sees didn't worry at all, said that the CEO should tell her if they can even predict what will happen tomorrow. But the director only said that they are the main faces of the company, not fortune tellers, so it is only natural that they cannot predict further events and do not know all the actions of users. But at this point, the girl stopped talking, saying that it was still a shame that they were still waiting for this, so now it was time to take a step back. She asked if the CEO remembered the same plan they had prepared the other day. Immediately, the CEO remembered. Judging by his surprised face, he couldn't believe that he would finally be able to use it, and the girl only gave the go-ahead for the execution. Most likely, the very announcement that we see now in front of us, or rather the Battle of the Bamboo Stick, is the very plan. This event says that there will be one room for him, and for him, there will be a room where everyone is equal. For the first time since the release of Arcadia, an official PvP championship has been announced, but what kind of event is this that no one has ever heard of before? At the same time, many popular posts appeared on one of the sites, saying that the forces of good and evil are fiercely opposed to each other, but which side will people choose? All these posts were constantly considered by our main character. He even read that the raid set from 120th level will soon take place. It seems that he miscalculated, because the user growth rate is much higher than it turned out. Finally, users above the 100th level began to appear, so they say that now the struggle with foreign servers for primacy in the game has been unleashed. So in the future, pumping users will become 1,000 times faster. In other words, over time, its losses will only continue to grow, because now the level system is not what you look like, and there is no question it can. What was happening now was exactly what he had been dreading all the time he had been walking towards his goal. However, as he stretched out right on his desk, he decided to calm down, because even if someone tried to attack him, he only needed to spend a few points to take advantage of the fact that he was used to go of heat, or he will acquire an item, so it will definitely be this hat. Smiling, he realized that one way or another it was time to leave them to their own devices. And besides, one very interesting event was about to begin very soon, which would interest not only him, but all this administrators. At first, people were laughing, and what can be countered with a bamboo stick? What did this event come up with over the years? Maybe another spy from another industry, maybe they just want to spoil this game. Well, in the end, the rules turned out to be extremely simple. It's enough to read the name and you will already be waiting for all the necessary information. This is literally a large-scale PvP championship, which even attacks only with the use of bamboo sticks, and the last survivor wins. It is allowed to use abilities and skills, but only with the help of a stick can a person deal damage. This all turned out to be quite very interesting. This damage, which does not depend on physical strength and on any other indicators. In other words, any independent class has a chance to win. This sentence that was used at the end, the last survivor, was quite attractive. The fact that this event has appeared right now suggests that they are trying their best to catch our main character, although he originally didn't plan to participate, but the winner is too valuable. By becoming the last survivor, the player will only be able to get a certain item from the inventory of the users they killed as a reward. However, it can be calm, no one is going to take these items away from them. They will be completely safe, just couldn't keep them to themselves. He was not just interested. It would be very stupid of him to refuse such fun. By this point he finally connected to the channel. And a week later, finally, as soon as they hit the fantastic island, a special map is here for the bamboo stick fighting event. It was all like an amusement park. Absolutely all the people who were there talked about the fact that Dex himself will participate in this event. That all this week users only talk about it, and also say that in the Battle Kingdom he is almost invincible, and it will already be possible to enter the top 30. Excellent result. They were talking about a team game, but one of the people said that he probably didn't hear, and then that the users couldn't stand it and conspired against him, because even so, they probably couldn't win. Everyone thought that our people were just a monster, a real god of fighting. There were even rumors that our character was taken over by the game developers themselves, not allowing him to breathe. Dex, who finally got into this world, understood that there was enough air from denial, and the players are still the same because 2 years have passed since he completely finished, and they still follow him around. Every move he makes causes quite a stir. But as for the map, he didn't even expect anything special at all, but the map has fulfilled all his expectations. After looking around for a month, you could not even believe that you can safely eat delicious food here while not worrying about extra calories. Yes, and get to all sorts of interesting places without wasting time and money. Maybe this is exactly the same innovations that virtual reality has brought to their lives. But at this rate, all the travel companies will soon go bust, and at the same time, people who were around began to say that they were beginning to be haunted by a strange feeling. Ellie said that not only were the bottle itself in an incomprehensible space, because it was with them people, but also not in the world of ghosts, as if a completely different dimension. Tan, on the other hand, was also incredibly angry, because he knew that he didn't care about her, but it was still like there was a contract between him that he should take care of him, because it seems to me or to him that escaping another dimension is too much. But our hero only said that in the end they still flew to him. Tan, without pointing to the portal that he was in the middle of it, said that they still had to suffer to find it, and what is the problem to say about it in advance? Does someone not know how to use the language? Of course, both companions realized that there was no point in arguing with the owner, so they decided to ask, after all, what wind had brought him anything at all. Something was definitely wrong here, because how could they not know that it turns out that there is this kind of majestic dimension somewhere? But Dex, looking to the side, said that this measurement is quite interesting. This character was immediately distracted by a certain girl, asking him to excuse her for bothering, because she just wanted to ask. After all, not in front of her was there a hidden class player. Sure enough, judging from the reaction, it should have been the green-haired girl in front of him, clearly a mage based on her attire. How did she even know that? Was it really that clear? But the girl, who had a certain strange glow in her eyes, replied that it would be hard not to guess after they were easily able to rush in space, almost tearing it up. The girl was certainly talking about familiars that were right next to our protagonist. Our character just didn't want to believe it, that the girl in front of him could see Tan and Ellie. The girl said that she actually saw them. Of course, it cannot be said that it is very clearly visible, but they gave off an incredibly strong energy. They're definitely not ghosts, but maybe pets. From the looks of it, this was actually someone who could summon helpers. Even the main character realized that his business is really bad. It is impossible for someone to use or find out this, even before the start of the competition. There was a look of reason on his face. He was really in a mess. He thought that he needed to get out as quickly as possible before other people sniffed out something else. But as luck would have it, the people who were standing right behind him started shouting that there was a star witch standing next to the carousel. Could this really be the same woman who is in second place in the ranking? They also noticed a man in a certain hoodie, or rather our hero. They didn't know who he was because our Dex had never been seen before, so his only solution was to cover himself with a hood. Of course, the Star Witch asked for forgiveness once again, because of her, extra attention is now riveted to him. She asked me to misunderstand her, but she was just very interested in his appearance. She didn't even want to annoy him. She introduced herself as Stella, a mage user who plays for the hidden class, Star Witch. She looked directly at him and said that even with her own eyes of truth, it was extremely difficult to see their creation, so it seems that the person of truth is much stronger than it seems at first glance. However, if he is afraid that she will reveal him, then she will not interrogate him again. Even the main character, calming down a little, said that it was very nice of her. And he thought in his head that the Star Witch, otherwise the witch, was connected. Of course he heard about her. She very often flashes in hot headlines. Many people began to approach her and squeeze their hands, asking to take a picture right with her. But while they were taking pictures with her, the Star Witch looked away at our main character as if it was time for him to run away. She was only thinking about what else to do. As soon as our main character ran away, both companions couldn't imagine that she was able to see them through their defenses, which is actually a strong girl. But our main character only understood that the girl stuck to him for a very long time, that they would definitely see her at the competition. But had she noticed him from the start? Of course, something told our protagonist that this time everything would not go as smoothly as it did before. But the street was already crowded with people, the fireworks were still flying, and the Ferris wheel had a lot of visitors. Finally, one of the assistant administrators appeared. She was very small in size, dressed in primitive clothing, carrying a bat, as well as bright hair. After calming down a little, she immediately announced to all the deer players that they had eaten well and had a lot of fun during all the time that he was giving them. Well, since they had rested, now she would finally be able to announce what she hadn't been able to announce for so long, since they had all given birth up to this point. It was cool to join the competition called Bamboo Grove. People who looked at her compared her to a goblin, because she was actually small in size. Many people thought she was cute. But the girl just pointed out her broken energy, asking for their attention, and then saying that in fact the long-awaited battle on bamboo sticks will begin. Now every person who was nearby received the bamboo stick itself. Her description stated that this weapon was simply made of you and any beech tree, symbolizing the equality of all people. In the properties, it was described that this weapon hit completely instantly. It simply died, regardless of any armor. It was not susceptible to any blocking, as well as magic accounts. Our main character, who had a lot of hair on his face, realized that now there were actually hair hanging. His body itched for the first time in a long time. The girl that was in the air now turned her bat into an incredibly huge size broken dot. She knew that now was the time to get rid of all the junk that they didn't need. Swinging her bat, she said that she was summoning him, the Golden Knight, and then she hit all the rides with her bat. The people who were in the area were a little scared. What is the little thing actually doing? Why is the ground beneath them starting to change? Star Witch, who managed to get him back, decided to go up, and another participant, Casillas, also realized that everything begins. Most likely all the main characters of this event appear in front of us. There is even a certain Angelica. The protagonist wasn't scared. He just stood there and watched as the area below him changed, and at one point many people moved into a certain building. And the girl who was right above them was starting to follow. Now everyone got a bamboo stick. Dex, after all, it was actually an unusual item. Girl, or the administrator, began to say that the number of participants is somewhere 3 million. A huge number she has not seen for a long time, so as she said, it will be one of the most hellish survival. Rules are rules, nothing can be done, so for reference, the remaining number will be displayed in the sky. She immediately started shouting and asked everyone to start a fight, because until there is only one lucky person left. Many people started to join the battle. A lot of bamboo sticks started to justify their opponents, which was interesting because as soon as the competition started, but already such a fierce battle had begun. Everyone who was an ally became an opponent, or vice versa. Many people were happy about this, but then they were also disappointed by the defeat. She also thought that all people were lying down and had used all their strength from the beginning, so just like she said, they were just weaklings who wanted to take a seat. But there were still some things that could fascinate the view. Stella, a certain night girl, or our hero, which in turn thought that all opponents were reversed, and yet he now started to deal with this item, which is able to finish off any user with just one hit. But now each of them has a certain amount of power, so it's only natural in the plan that someone can't go against their wishes. So that powerful equipment, one of the people who was right behind our protagonist also tried to finish him off, but Dex managed to dodge. The experienced person said that most likely the enemy decided to run away because he was very scared. Judging by his equipment, he is generally a novice. The attacker said not to take offense at him, but unfortunately Tom will have to become his first victim. Our main character, who was looking directly at him with complete disgust, asked to look up. The attacker thought it was just a lion, but at the same time a bamboo stick fell on him, forcing him to go to another world. Dex understood that he would need stealth skills to participate in this competition, but what kind of skill would spiritualism provide him with? Tan was very happy with this offer. He said that the main thing is to pay with points and water cleaners, and in addition, to water at the place and time. He immediately decided to summon the one he wanted. Our character, before the competition began, learned something new while trying to understand the skills of spiritualism, namely that it can be used to summon not only people, but other creatures, as well as ghosts. At the same time, a ghost named Mist was recognized, and spiritualism was activated. A certain outfit for our main character. This ghost that he summoned doesn't really exist in reality. It looks more like a black cloud, but this time it's perfect for this event because it easily dodges all attacks. All the attacks that were made by our main character or passed through him. Of course, people thought they had pierced it, but they didn't succeed, so our Dex just had to be sent to the other world. Looking at all this, it was very clear that there were no rules in this competition, that it was only a battle. This is something of a big bonus because the most important thing was only to survive. From now on, you will have to try a little to avoid falling into the eyes of others. Tan, looking at this, thought it was a great idea, and did he understand correctly that now our protagonist decided to hide well, then attack strong players from afar. But our protagonist didn't understand what he was talking about because it was time to hide. It was time to have a good time. He even used spiritualism for this, so in one word you could say that if there are no witnesses, it's like going unnoticed. On the face of our hero, a new cruel face appeared. Tan thought that this was not a real person, but real demons in the flesh. Dex went in search of new player kills, as well as forcing them to come to their own despair. Of course, they decided to attack him themselves, so it's no big deal for him not to attack them too. The Star Mage also understood that I was in a very advantageous position. As a result, he was attacked by many people who were also defeated by her. A certain magic circle was formed under her. Apparently she is actually a great magician. She only decided to find the only one who can satisfy her. She could not wait for the moment when she could finally fight with a really strong opponent. Really with those weaklings that she now met next to her, her face showed the desire of a strong opponent. We, in turn, understand that the bamboo hit. It was this bamboo stick that prompted people to either go crazy or actually believe that they are strong people. At this moment, we were faced with a formation of people who said that it was in front of the bamboo stick that they were all equal, so now, the future under her protection, it was time to show everyone what the anger of the people really looks like. They talked about how they should punish those unscrupulous pranksters who engaged in violence in order to achieve more. They formed a revolutionary organization and were even given an exclusive outfit for the competition area. They thought that its first target was just some unknown to the user, who is our main character, but he only said that those in the river would definitely not be able to do anything about it. One of the captains said that since he did not respect them, he and his soldiers would have to deal with him, which would help them with a bamboo stick. At the same time, all the opponents rushed straight at our Dex. Here, in turn, I stood, looking at them and do not understand what is happening. There was no expression of horror, delight, or any other emotion on his face. As soon as the bamboo stick was about to hit him, his presence only disappeared, as if he wasn't there at all, as if he was dust. All the guards who tried to hit it couldn't believe their eyes, because how is it even possible that they hit it accurately? But Dex, who appeared right in front of them, just smiled, letting them know that they would not succeed. All players were shown that they could not attack this object. This skill was called Unstable Presence. It was the basic passive effect of using Ghostly Mist, and it allowed them to completely avoid any kind of attack. People said it wasn't fair, that you couldn't use such skills. But our character didn't see anything wrong with it. He said that it's not fair, it's just a passive effect. But now it's not fair, starting with a bamboo stick and killing all the henchmen of this revolutionary club. People, more precisely, the head of this club understood that 4 strikes in 1 second, while not using any skills. How many % do you need to be in sync with the capsule to do something like this? But she, the main character, no longer felt anything other than the real ecstasy received from the fact that he was dealing with all the members of the club. Now the head himself was defeated with a single attack. Evaporating. He said that he shouldn't have lost like this, but it was already too late. The bamboo stick revolutionary organization was destroyed by one user, or rather our main character. Dex, that one, that the other, they all attack only with the help of this insignificant stick, so most likely in the near future. Exactly no one will come across him, although now is clearly not the time to stand out exactly, otherwise you will just be in tatters. Safely, an incredible achievement. He was able to defeat more than 1,000 people with just a bamboo stick, then most likely embodied the meaning of equality, which is symbolized by bamboo sticks, then earned the title of revolutionary fighting for equality. Even with these achievements, he was only counting on this event to finally end, and after looking at the number of people that were left, it was already less than 3,000. In the first hours, more than hundreds of thousands of people died, and so quickly that the number of players decreased extremely rapidly, but now that there were only a few players left in the game, their number almost does not move, and the character realized that if he wants it all to end as soon as possible, then it's time to start doing something. He knew that the map was too huge, so catching each survivor one by one was not a big problem. But while Dex was thinking about this, a certain girl rushed at him, asking him to get out of the way. It was a frightened girl who was rushing at him with a bamboo stick. The girl understood that she could not stop, that she was about to crash into our main character. Well, as soon as her body was supposed to come into contact with the body of our protagonist, she just rushed through it, then fell to the floor. She was very scared, because she thought that there was a ghost in front of her, because she thought that she would knock him down. Of course, our Dex replied that everything was something like that, but he understood that it was all thanks to passive skills. But what kind of girl was this in front of him? If you look closely, she looked more like a certain novice, although if he was still alive, then in fact a little bit that's what it is. At the same time, the same Star Witch appeared, who was quite happy to meet our main character. She said that when they first met, she had a strong feeling that something that had definitely hooked her point was hovering. She was right that the person in front of her was actually a special person to be able to survive up to such a point. Stella was ranked second in the overall ranking by that time, and the girl who almost ran into Dex was asking for his help, and our character who looked at her thought, why would he even need to help her? But the girl was just silent, so our hero said that if he understood everything correctly, then he understood that the Star Witch was chasing her. So why would he interfere in someone's affairs and help, especially when your opponent is in second place in the ranking, and in addition also has magic? Although in reality, players can only die from attacks made with a bamboo stick, but the magic still works anyway, and this is even more annoying. Of course, the Star Witch now understood that the person in front of her was much more perfect than she had imagined. Dex, having decided not to do anything, said that he needed to finish what he had started, and then said that he was already leaving from here. Of course, he wouldn't mind fighting someone who had good skills, but it was still too early for that, so he needed to get out of here as soon as possible. Well, just as he decided to leave the place, he received a certain message that startled him. He looked back and saw the Star Witch trying to stab the girl behind him with her bamboo stick. But our main character decided to stop her. He said that he didn't know what he was doing, but then he shouted that he needed to protect that girl who was right behind him. Angelica was in shock while our character was actually trying to protect her. He actually received a message saying that our main character is the one who is working tirelessly on him to plunge the world into chaos, so he needed to find an ally who would be marked with certain points. Just such a dot hung over Angelica. Of course, at this moment, we had another mysterious world of Arcadia in front of us. The first thing a person has ever heard when they find themselves here in this mysterious world is this really a game? But it turned out that she probably didn't belong here, that it didn't play games too much. This was too special a world that a girl as ordinary as her would definitely not be able to find anything in. It was because of this that she found that he was unlikely to be suitable for someone like her, who lived a very ordinary life, but at that moment there was someone who agreed to teach her everything. She was approached by an old lady who realized that the girl was lost. The old lady immediately invited her to become her disciple. This old lady was dressed in a black corset, had blue hair. This turned out to be an NPC completely different from the rest of the characters. Angelica was a little shocked, because was she supposed to be offered nice at all, or something like that? But by the time I started learning, the old lady told her that if we talk about magic, then the most important thing in the question is just to expand your mind, your knowledge and skills. Angelica can only know her if she starts looking at the world in a completely different way and devotes herself to broader ideas and concepts. When she looked at the moon, she asked her to look at the sky, at the way the stars were shining, and how the moonlight seeped through her entire body. Is it really ugly? Unlike the others, she, as an archmage, is most attracted to nothing but the ever-shining star and the majestic moon. She taught this special magic, which she created herself, to two of her students, namely Stella, the Star Witch, and Angelica, the magic girl of the moonlight. She gave them 2 grimoires each, saying that she was going to go on a long journey very soon, and that what she had given them in her hands was her gift. The last gift of her life. The day when these 2 magical books will merge into one, Sanya, will be the day of the birth of one of the great wizards, whose abilities go beyond human knowledge and exceed any limitations. In each girl's eyes, a distinctive sign appeared, a sign of the very magic that she had been trained in. It was this chance, this book, that was the chance to become a great wizard. And he got even such an unremarkable girl. However, it was the teacher who did not know that that chance could become for her, on the contrary, a curse. It was immediately clear that Angelica was not to blame for anything, but Stella was clearly already dreaming and wanted to become the same majestic magician that her teacher told her about. And we are back to the moment when our protagonist noticed that Angelica had to hang a certain sign. He remembered the very task that she had told him and made him find his companions. Of course, I wasn't happy about this outcome, so I had to stand right in front of Stella. Stella was clearly not happy about this outcome, because wasn't it just that our main characters themselves said that he wasn't going to interfere? Of course, our pro finally apologized for all this, but still, despite the fact that he went against his words, he can't do anything about it, so he asks the girl to let Angelica go. Stella, who was clearly not happy with this, judging from her expression, asked what would happen if she refused. He just said that he had no choice but to get rid of her, and he also took out his bamboo stick, but it was quite possible that it was going to start like this. Stella, what's not clear is that he's probably joking and asked if he thought it would be that easy. She immediately activated the chain lightning magic with a frantic expression, sending it flying straight across the ground. Even the main character couldn't have expected this. He didn't expect that Stella would be so fast that even a defensive drain wouldn't be able to save him. Our character was hit by lightning with me. His stamina began to drop sharply. He was paralyzed, so for a while he simply will not be able to move. And then, he noticed a fireball flying towards him, magic grabbing, and also a star slash. The only circular magic that could be used at the moment. Angelica realized that Stella wanted to finish off our main character as quickly as possible. Angelica immediately started shouting at our logger not to try to stop these magic charges, but just to run away. But it was too late. Lots of explosions and stuff like that were ahead. Angelica was only looking at what was happening right in front of her, where our character was already on the verge of death, so all the stats were snowflakes due to the fact that death can only be done with a bamboo spear. Dex, who was finally able to say at least something, said that of course it is impossible and not for nothing in this event that everyone is equal. Players cannot be killed, nothing else, except for the letter of the stick. The protagonist, having already lost all his strength, could only lean on his elbows, but it is quite possible that all the strength left his body. Stood, who watched it from a high place, said that most likely she was in vain worried that in front of her such an enemy. She thought he was special, but in reality, he couldn't stand it. Even if they met again, she hoped that she wouldn't be too upset that he died because of her. Stella, who had already picked up her bamboo stick, and also anticipating that she was about to gain the upper hand, said that whatever it was, but the first one started Dex, there was no need to pry into her business. Our main character, despite the fact that he was in such a deplorable state, only continued to smile. Of course, these are just ordinary events, there was nothing to be offended. Standing there, looking at him, he thought that he had already accepted his defeat, that he was actually an interesting guy in front of her, but at the same time he decided to hit him with a bamboo sword. But the notification that she couldn't attack this item threw her off track. What kind of notification was this anyway? Why couldn't she kill him? But it was too late. Our protagonist just took and pierced her bamboo and stick. He also said that as they agreed, in fact, it is not necessary to offend each other. He said that this is just an event. She clearly wasn't happy with this turn of events, because what the heck is this? Why wasn't the dick in front of her killed? And he said that he was very lucky that the skill was activated in time, or he was definitely already defeated. Angelica, who had only been standing at the side for a single turn, she lowered her bamboo stick, or rather dropped it from the surprise point that the person in front of her had defeated the very one she couldn't beat, that she was in second place in the ranking. She still, until recently, thought that our character has no chance, but who in general was in front of her. Dex, who pretty much spent all his strength, realized that he was dizzy, so Angelica also ran to him, asking if he was alright. Dex, who responded that he was doing well, said that except for the fact that he didn't die, he was pretty happy about everything. But Angelica only began to bow at his feet, saying that she was very grateful, because if it wasn't for him, she would definitely be dead by now. Our main character, looking at it from the side, he would say that he almost did nothing, but still just say it, because why does Stella need it at all? Angelica immediately began to hesitate a little, and then said that it was too long to tell, but in short, before their mentor left somewhere, she gave them each an item. If one of them tries to master these two, they can probably become a strong wizard. Our main character realized that Stella seemed to have gone crazy for this idea and started chasing her, in order to eventually kill her and take him away. Angelica, saying that this is all really so, only began to stutter, which point she usually stood motionless, but then our main character asked her what she was going to do next. Angelica didn't understand what the question was at first, but then our Parisnash said that Stella is not an easy player, because if yes I forgot, but actually in second place in the rating, how is Angelica going to overtake her? Can she hunt at all or improve? Angelica, the crowd looked at the floor and said that she didn't even know. Dex asked the girl what her level was, but the girl said 43. Of course, it was somehow incomprehensible, because this level cannot be called not low, not high, but what is much more serious, he decided to ask. Because isn't she now wearing the same school uniform that is worn at the 20th level? Because there was not even that accessory, as far as he remembers, but it is given as a reward for completing a quest at the 15th level. Of course, the girl replied, a little embarrassed, that she simply did not have money for another one since she had to constantly run from her opponent. Our main character, after thinking about it, immediately understood and came up with a solution. He decided that he could try this thing that he had been storing for a long time. He remembered the very skill about transferring decency points. He immediately jumped on Angelica with an incredibly happy and joyful face. Angelica was a little embarrassed, but it was too late because our protagonist asked her to give all the items that she has. As soon as the girl did this, it was noticeable that all the objects were lying on the floor. Of course, she was embarrassed because she thought it was a little strange. But our protagonist, despite the fact that he had a developed girl in front of him, told her to move away a little because he had something to check. Angelica, having done this, now began to stand aside because the person in front of her did not even look at her. She is standing there worrying, just like an probably the person in front of her can definitely be trusted. But our main character, I understand, or rather, having understood judging by her story, decided that those things that are now in the form in front of him must be used for a very long time. He also activated his power directly at them. His hands lit up again. He said the table that it was necessary to say such moments, or rather the phrase about the transfer of decency points. The girl was surprised, because what other decency points are there? She was very afraid of the very light that just burst out of the hand of our main character. Now there were objects of the only quality in front of her. The first was Pulsock Poverty, then the Mother of You Poverty, Shoes of Poverty, as well as everything else point turned out. Finally, and the gray characteristics were increased. It turns out that depending on how the item was used, the effect of transferring decency points is also determined. Angelica, Nadia couldn't believe all her new clothes on herself because really these are all her items. Dex said that it was true, but fortunately, on the one hand, it was a good thing that she had wandered around with them for so long. Otherwise, I don't know if it would have worked at all. Of course, he knew they weren't very strong commas, but they were a good place to start. Angelica, who was standing on the sidelines, knew that she should be grateful for such a gift, but why would someone like her help him? She immediately asked, after all, who in general is the front one, who is he? You know, the protagonist smiled and said that if only he were her new partner, then I took her hands again. He looked her straight in the eye, saying that they still have a lot to do. Now in front of Angelica and dedicated a notification that a player named Dex has sent her a friend invitation, but does she want to accept it? Angelica was very surprised because she had already seen this nickname. Of course, she was wary of whether he was being too kind to her, so he also cheated on her, suspicious of some kind, but now all doubts were dispelled. I still can't believe that such a star, as soon as one in the rank decided to make friends with her, is simply incomprehensible to the mind. However, at the same time, our main character asked her for one promise, that no one would know about this, or rather about this friendship. Angelica, with full seriousness all over her eyes, replied that it would be so, she would never tell anyone about it. Tan, who was sitting in the hood of our main character, said that this is probably a strange decision, because until recently he did not want anyone to know who he really is. Our protagonist said that this is actually true, but he still changed his mind. He thought through all the options for events. Now, because of the recent auction house incident, everyone knows that he's started playing Arcadia, so there's no need for him to hide his nicknames, especially those he trusts. What is important is how exactly it should appear before people, evil or good. At that moment, Angelica asked him to look at one of the main things in this event, or rather at the counter of people, what was left in this test. Very soon there will be less than 1,000 players. Our character, looking up, realized that in fact there were only 2 people left, while out of more than 3 million players there will be 1.000. He did not know who was behind this, but clearly some scumbags. At the same time, 2 people appeared in front of our main character, who thought that this would be an easy goal. After looking at the outfits of our heroes, they realized that most likely not some sick people, but also a couple. Why didn't anyone finish them off at all? One of the men was clearly an assassin or rogue, and the other was a berserker or tank. They realized that they were newbies, so they thought it would be incredibly easy today. Of course, our main character was happy, because now all the hundreds who were waiting arrived in time, right by the way, so he asked Angelica to immediately deal with them. Angelica was shocked at this request, because what can she do? Really just hide so as not to interfere with anyone. But she's the main character said that she doesn't have time to worry. You're now time to test abilities on new items, so those 2 are on her. He asked her to sort it out. Angelica was still shocked, but the people who were standing right in front of them had already lost their temper. They immediately attacked Angelica. Angelica, who immediately started to worry, decided to use all the items from this map as soon as possible. The staff's power was activated, so it activated the shield. The robbers thought that there was no way they could help it. Because it was a first circle magic skill, they thought that as soon as it broke, it would dance. Angelica, in turn, was very excited, because she saw that the shield was cracking, that it could not continue like this. She needed to do as our salesman himself taught her. She started using the shield spell over and over again, after which in fact a lot of holes were formed in the air. None of the enemies understood what was going on. After all, why so much magic was used in one moment. Even the main character, looking at it all from the side, understood that now the items that were equipped on the girl were of course some incomprehensible, but high-rank monsters she definitely would not have defeated. However, it is also impossible for her to forget about this, and the most important thing here is 100, which means that when they are all used together, it means that Angelica can use the magic of the first circle at least to the last, because the effect with this one is 100, which reduces the mana consumption of the first circle by 99%, the second by 50, and also increases the mana consumption third round for 1000%. With incredible pleasure, I looked at all this means, despite the fact that Angelica continued to use the spell point that magic missiles were approaching them. This is the last thing the opponents saw before they died. After exterminating the last 2 players, the number of remaining survivors has now reached the 1000-player mark. The first stage of bamboo sticks was completed, and these 2 probably did not know that today was not an easy day, because the great magician of the first circle of magic, now a real psycho in PvP, beaten to the brain to the Russian psycho who will finish you off until your brains run out, namely the day when the real Angelica appeared. Angelica was actually happy, and there was an incredible sense of joy on her face. The candidate for the position of assistant has reached the level of trust, so a player named Angelica becomes your assistant. This is the notification that our main character has now received in his system. Depending on the assistant's game, you can earn decency points as a reward, so the number of points earned at the moment was 243 points. Our character, looking at the name of the assistant over Angelica, only made him understand that now he feels like a king. He only hopes that she will turn into an invisible monster, which many people can't delete. At the same time, the CEO, who was watching this competition, realized that even the main character was finally caught. He wanted to follow the mysterious player, but at the same time he was notified that he did not have enough authority to request information about the selected user. The CEO didn't know what he was up to this time, but he wouldn't let it go that easily now. Now that the second stage of the Bamboo Stick Festival was starting, a lot of people were gathered in one place. The girl who was knocked down in her hand started sitting on the roof again and started saying that the unexpected happened. She expected that there would be many high-ranked rankers left at the end. But in the end, it turned out that most of them even low ranks. She could see that even level 43 survived, so there were also users who didn't pass the level 50 threshold, which was just amazing. But is it really just all a matter of luck, or is it still ability? Of course, she was talking about Angelica, so that at the same time she began to smile and say that everything that she does not understand, they will learn in the second stage. The girl began to jump and laugh, saying that before starting the second stage of the festival, she should explain to them 2 extremely important changes. The bamboo sticks immediately began to glow with a different glow, and the girl said that they would not worry because everything is fair. They just decided to improve some skills as they showed everyone too childish. First of all, the bamboo spear can now be evaluated not only for physical but also magical attacks. In other words, tricks such as ignoring physical attacks or absolute defense will no longer help block the power of the stick. Of course, she said all this about our main character, Tan. It's clear that she's actually doing all this, but it seems like it's in his line, so what's he going to do now? But our character just smiled and said that he will now just be extremely careful not to run out of fights, so he will also see who wins this competition. The girl continued to speak, and many people who listened to her speech could not believe that there were actually those very skills called ignoring physical attacks and absolute defense. They understood that it was absolutely unfair. Who even used it? But the girl immediately said one more thing, that also, because of some items, there is a serious imbalance, and their festival is a war for equality, so such items are contrary to their principles. So in the upcoming second and third stages, they will not be able to use any lotions, effects for equipment, except for regular weapons. Angelica knew it was about her, because what about herself? But the girl has already finished, said that it was all changes, so now you need to start the second stage, but is everything happy? Of course, our main character was not happy, who understood that even if they were not, it was unlikely that they would care, because why would she even ask? The girl also said that from now on, a poisonous gas will go out from outside the map. It will spread as fast as a person runs, so they will have to be a little diarrheal. The girl, with an incredible thirst in her eyes, decided to announce that now they are starting that this festival is open. Now the administrator, who continued to use the third level skills, realized that the emergency patch had been completed, that now some of the festival's restrictions on different side sticks had been changed. Of course, they do not meet the criteria of the system. For this there would have been some penalties, but the CEO did not care. One developer who looked at the CEO and asked him if he was sure now advised him to avoid fines as much as possible. He replied that everything was fine. He was worried because if something happened, it would be him who would get off and pay for it. The director said that our character was the one who created the bloodsucker. It was because of him that the huge problems they went to such measures. The biggest benefit for the management is to disclose all the circumstances. First of all, this is exactly this festival, that very festive event in honor of the creation of Cerberus. This is something like the trump card that their Korean branch put forward in order to resolve all the complaints and dissatisfactions of the players. It is necessary to get rid of such a problematic kid in the second stage. By that time, our character, looking at pitifully, told her that they need to split up, because if it works out, they will meet in the third stage. Angelica couldn't believe it, because did anyone really want to get rid of her now, just because she couldn't use her gear anymore? Our main character said that in general, all the items from Made for Her, and I forgot someone to use, then got rid of her a long time ago, so after she contacted this witch, then nothing good but it did not earn. All these words directly stabbed Angelica in the heart. She also told the main character that he was joking, but now he is not sure that he can protect her. He immediately patted her on the head, yes, that she actually trusted her. He also stood up and said that he had one plan and it was too dangerous. Angelica, after listening to this, could not understand what kind of plans it was. Our character just waved his hand and said that the girl can still use her weapon, so the main thing is just to try not to get involved with some freaks. Angelica, looking at his back, said that now the next meeting will